I'm so excited to be joined by Brian Rosenberg, the Executive Director of the GWK Academy. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Angela, great to see you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, thank you. This will be a really fun conversation. So, Brian and I have known each other for quite some time. We partner a lot. I am a huge fan of what he's built. He'll tell you a little bit about what he offers. Sunfish is actually a part of the GWK Academy too. So we'll start with some introductions while people trickle in, and then I'll share the agenda for today. We have 30 minutes, a really, really packed 30 minutes. With a lot of great content for anyone who's considering building their family through surrogacy. So, let me start with some intros. I am Angela, the co founder and CEO of Sunfish. I previously worked as a director at one of the largest surrogacy agencies. My background's in healthcare and financial access. So, I'm really passionate about helping people build families. I saw thousands of people kind of struggle with the logistical and financial side of family building. So, started Sunfish a few years ago with an incredible group of operators from the fertility space, the technology space, the fintech space to help people navigate the financial and logistical steps of building a family. Let me introduce Brian. Brian, do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Brian Rosenberg, the Executive Director and Head Coach for GWK Academy. I'm also the founder of Gays with Kids. My husband and I have three kids through adoption and surrogacy journeys. We found out about Levi when he was 3 days old. Today he's 17. He's just finishing up his junior
Wow.
year of high school where he knows how to drive a car. He's learning how to fly a plane, and we're looking at
Oh,
colleges.
well, that's
So
kind of scary, but
yeah, it is scary. Everything I just said was scary. Not one thing was not scary. Then Levi has twin sisters, Ella and Sadie, who are 17 months younger than him. They're 15. I like to share that I'm the biological parent, and the reason I share that I'm the biological parent is that I'm also HIV. I've been living with HIV since before I met my husband Ferd, and oh my God, in 2 weeks we're going to be celebrating our 33rd anniversary.
Aw,
So, in case anyone who's
wow.
watching is also living with HIV or perhaps another chronic illness, I want to make sure you understand that that does not necessarily preclude you from becoming a parent, whatever path that you choose.
I'm really excited to hear more about your story. Thank you for being so open. Brian and I have known each other for a long time. He's a really incredible thought leader and source of information in this community. And actually, I was joking with him. He was just on the Today Show. So I was saying he was warming up for this on the Today Show. But we're lucky to have him. I'll just share the agenda. We're going to talk through some of the options for family building, the different pathways that people go through, and hear Brian's story. And then I'll talk through the financial, logistical, and emotional preparation, including real costs, really tactical tips for anyone considering surrogacy. There is a button at the bottom of your Zoom screen where you can chat us questions. We'll answer those throughout and also have dedicated time for Q&A at the end. And we'll be sending this around afterwards. So if you have any questions, both of our organizations are happy to help. So don't be shy to jump in with questions. But this is a really overwhelming process. Like I said, both Brian and I are very familiar with surrogacy and assisted reproduction, as it's called, as well as other pathways to build your family, like adoption. There's a lot of information to navigate, a lot of paperwork, a lot of choices on agency, clinic, a lot of logistics like insurance and timelines, and trying to make that all fit. It can feel like another full-time job.
Gotcha.
So, luckily, you have resources like ours to help you. With that, I'd love to. I'm actually going to stop my screen sharing so we can see Brian. I'd love to have you share a little bit about your personal journey as we dive in.
Sure. Thanks so much again. And Angela's right. I've been proud to have Sunfish and Angela part of the GWK Academy Family Building Network since our launch. So,
Mhm.
and she offers a wealth of invaluable information to help folks afford their journeys. Because that's like one of the first questions that people always say to me is, how, once they find the price tag, how can I afford this? And I'm like, Sunfish, please.
Yes.
Um, all right, so I start to say, my husband and I have three kids through adoption and surrogacy, and our kids are teenagers. When we were going through our journey, things were a lot different, right? There was no There were no webinars. There were no virtual phone calls. And I remember we would go into meetings, whether it was with the doctor or the surrogacy agency or the adoption agency or the adoption attorney. And we just, I wasn't taking notes because we want to pay attention and ask questions. We would leave those meetings, every single one of them, with more questions coming out than we had going in. I don't think we made a single decision with either journey feeling confident about what we were doing. And I remember at some point saying to Bert, I wish there was some place we could go to, but there wasn't any. And so that reality is what led me eventually to launch Gays with Kids. Now, that was after our kids were out of diapers and they were eating solid foods and we had a chance to breathe. And my thought was, you know what? I'm just going to share stories of how other guys we shared our story and then we started sharing other stories. And over the years, we've shared hundreds and hundreds, into thousands of stories of other gay men and just about how they were creating their families. But most of the stories, like the one we told about ours, were told anecdotally from the viewpoint of the dad. So what do I mean? It'd be like, meet Brian and Ferd together since June 20th of 1993. But when the guys got together, they were not thinking about creating families. Brian was living with HIV. The guys were going to funerals. We probably went to some 20 to 30 funerals of guys in their 20s and 30s. In fact, I
Mm.
remember going to a funeral of someone who's 40 years old, and we're all like, oh my God, can you imagine if we could only live to 40 years of age? So,
Wow.
and then the so-called AIDS cocktail came, and whilst I still lost some good friends for whatever reason, I was fine, and they saved me. And eventually, we realized that we had to start planning for the future. We had a life to look forward to, and so that's when we decided to become dads. But again, it was so complicated for us. And so, and sharing stories of other people, I realized it was so complicated and that we were doing a great job inspiring people because we were sharing all these stories. And I know that we even changed hearts and minds. But like, I remember someone came up to me and said, I'd love to chat on Facebook. He said, can we chat? And we went on on our phones. He's like, I just want to let you know that you've inspired me. And if you've inspired me, you've inspired, no doubt, many others. And I got a little verklempt and I said, oh, thanks
Oh,
so much. I appreciate that. And I thought, so tell me, what are you going to do now that you're so inspired? And he's like, I have no idea. I guess I'll just have to wing it. And I realized, oh my God, I've been inspiring all these people and then letting everyone do like leaving them to do it all on their own.
just
I
figure it
wasn't
out.
helping them figure it out. I'm like, that's ridiculous. So it was
Yeah.
that realization that led me to create what would eventually become known as GWK Academy. Um, and my goal is that I don't want anyone ever feel less than confident about the decisions they're making. And I believe that the way you become confident is by being educated. So, as we're launching GWK Academy and we're building it up, a couple of realizations. One, I was way past 40 and I was about to turn a very large number, one that I never thought I was going to come close to. And I started thinking about legacy and what I'm leaving behind. And then two, I saw the political climate change, right? And I saw that no one was trying to do for the rest of the LGBTQ plus community on a national level what we were hoping to do with gay men in terms of helping them become dads. So we took GWK Academy, spun it out of Gays with Kids as its own separate nonprofit entity, and expanded our support so that we're supporting family building for all LGBTQ plus people across all paths of parenthood. And if you come to GWK Academy now, you'll see courses that take you through everything I wish I had known about surrogacy and IVF, but we also do it through all different adoption paths, right? Domestic infant adoption with an agency or an independent, adoption from foster care, international adoption. We have queer family building for lesbians and queer women, where we talk about everything from home insemination to IUI, the IVF, reciprocal IVF, and trans fertility pathways. In addition to
Mhm.
that, we offer coaching calls and we also connect people with vetted family building partners, organizations that I know and trust well, like Sunfish, like Angela, to help people. And we do all of that for free because I don't want anyone. as we all know, building a family is very expensive no matter which path you choose. So I don't want anyone to think, oh, I can't GW, it's just another family building partner. I want to make sure you're educated before you start your journey, and that's why we do it all for free.
It's so amazing. And I've heard your story before, but I get chills every time. So
Oh,
I'm really glad
thank
you're
you.
here with us. Can you just say a little bit more? So you've had a few kids. What were the different pathways that you chose?
Sure. So we were going to do adoption. That was what we just wanted to do. I think people choose their pathways mostly based on their lived experiences, their resources, their priorities, right? Do you want a baby? Do you want a newborn? Does the newborn have to be genetically connected to you? Do you care more about raising a child in need, supporting another kid? So based on all that stuff, we chose the adoption route. And we were actually matched with a baby boy who was living with his teenage mom and her boyfriend, her teenage boyfriend, who was not the dad. And I got to hold this baby for 3 hours. And at the end of those 3 hours, she said to me, "You're going to be his dad's. Thank you so much. But I want to keep him a little bit longer." And she had what I learned later on would be like, areas of concern for me for like thinking that she was going to give him up. And sure enough, after 3 or 4 months, spending about fifteen to $20,000 on legal fees and social workers, etc. She decided, and it was totally her prerogative, that she did not want to give her child up for adoption, and that was absolutely her right. Bummer for us, but totally within her rights. And so we said, I
Yeah.
guess we're not going to become dads through adoption. And my husband figured out a way that we could both try to become dads through surrogacy. But Andrews, it turns out his little guys didn't swim. So the HIV positive guy is the one that became the biological dad. And
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, unfortunately, I've heard that story a lot with people pursuing adoption, and it's great that the baby found a home. But it can be really hard when you're trying to build your own family.
Right.
So maybe let's talk a little bit about the timeline. I'm going to pull up the slides again.
Okay.
And while I'm pulling that up, I just wanted to ask, have you ever had hetero couples use the GWK Academy? Is there
It's
content?
It's funny that you asked. So we absolutely have. In both cases, it was a heterosexual couple who were going to go through a surrogacy journey. They needed a gestational surrogate. And I'm like thinking to myself, I got them covered. I know that. It's going to be
Yeah,
exactly the same. Of
it's a lot
course,
of the same.
that's a lot of saying. The difference is, of course, when a gay man comes to a surrogacy journey, we're like all gung ho and we're excited. Like this is the start of our journey. When a straight couple comes to the decision they're going to go through a surrogacy journey, they've already been going through it for a while, right? And they're only coming to this because it didn't the old fashioned way didn't work for them. And they've had to look and they've probably been in fertility and spent a lot of money. And the poor woman has probably gone through all kinds of fertility
Yeah, sometimes
shots
there's
and
a
stuff.
long
Yeah,
history.
yeah.
Yeah,
And so they're not like necessarily coming all excited the way a gay man is coming into it. But otherwise, yeah. So I've been able to help them, and I actually am helping a couple right now through an adoption journey. We're happy to help anyone that
amazing.
comes
You're
our way.
amazing. All
So
right, so tell us a little bit about the timeline and then I'll jump into some of the logistics.
okay, so one of the most important things you can do before starting a surrogacy journey is to understand the timeline. I always let people know that on average, a surrogacy journey takes about 2 years. Now, for some people, it ends up taking considerably longer, and others are able to shave away some of the time from that, typically by paying premium services, premium matching services, etc. So I like to break down the timeline into three different stages or phases or milestones. All right. The first one is what we call the learn and prepare stage. You're watching this, so you're at the very beginning of your learn and prepare stage. This is where you'll educate yourself, identify your goals, determine your budget, and begin assembling your team of professionals. You'll
Hmm.
also complete intended parent screening, which is like what my husband and I did when we realized that his little guys didn't swim. And you'll start making important decisions about things like egg donation, embryo creation, and agency support. What I like to share about this first stage is the time invested here is incredibly valuable because it helps set the foundation for everything that follows.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. The second phase is often the longest and least predictable. This includes completing medical screenings, legal contracts, genetic testing, creating your embryos, and ultimately finding and matching with a surrogate. And while everyone wants to move quickly through this stage, many parts of the process depend on timing and, as I like to share, factors outside of your control. Patience becomes an important skill. And it's really important at this point, if you've done your due diligence and you've chosen your family building partners wisely, you've got to learn to trust them. Now,
Yep.
once your embryos have been created and you're matched with the surrogate, here comes what the exciting part, right? You move into the transfer, pregnancy, and birth phase. Even after successful embryo transfer, of course, there's still a 9 month pregnancy ahead of you. And
Mhm.
as any person who's gone through this journey will tell you, pregnancy often feels both incredibly fast and incredibly slow at the same time.
Mhm.
When you understand from the beginning that this is a marathon, not a sprint, you're less likely to become frustrated when things take longer than expected. And I would say that the intended parents who tend to have the best experience aren't necessarily the ones whose journeys move the fastest. They're the ones who begin with realistic expectations, understand that delays can happen, are prepared to deal with challenges, and appreciate that every milestone brings them one step closer to parenthood.
Yeah. That's very well said. Okay, so with that grounding, I'll dive into a few more pieces of the logistical, financial, and
Sure.
emotional readiness. So it's great that everyone's here today. We definitely recommend starting early. As you said, the first 6 months or even a year can be really helpful for planning. There's a lot that you can do at the beginning in terms of selecting your team and agency, assembling your team. Sunfish really leans into personalized logistical support. So we create a personalized plan for each person that's going through their journey. We can help you review any insurance benefits you may have. Sometimes people are pleasantly surprised, like you may have family law coverage to cover the legal fees. We can help with financial planning, help with selecting a clinic in addition to the great preferred providers that GWK Academy works with. Sunfish also has a network of preferred providers, so you can compare both lists. And then it does take time to create embryos, especially if you're using an egg donor, sperm donor, or embryo donor. So there's a lot of testing and things that go into that. While you're working through that, you can go on the agency wait list. I would say what I'm hearing from most agencies is 6 to 12 months, sometimes even longer, depending on your preferences. So if you're looking for someone who has certain income levels or certain vaccination requirements or certain geographies, then that will make the wait list longer for you. Um, and while you're waiting to be matched, definitely be clear with your agency around what really matters to you so that they're not going and sourcing potential carriers, potential surrogates that aren't going to be a fit, or screening people that might not be a fit personality wise or whatever other logistics you're looking for. It's okay if you don't have this timeline. Earlier planning is great, but you can also just jump right in. Um, in terms of actual costs, I put together kind of what we're seeing in the US right now. These are very much ranges and estimations, but the big costs are going to be you're paying your surrogate for her time and any other allowances she might need, like care for her kids or maternity clothes. You're obviously paying for the IVF medical treatments and any fees at the delivery. As well. You're paying your surrogacy agency. I would say most probably charge around 40,000 now, if not more. You're paying for your surrogate's insurance. So you want to make sure she's fully covered for anything that could happen. You're paying legal fees for yourself and your surrogate's legal contract review. You're paying for all of her travel, psych screening, any miscellaneous expenses. And then if you do need an egg donor or sperm donor, I should have put that on here too. That can range anywhere from 30,000 and up, depending on the donor fees. So Again, this is very high level, but I just like to be really transparent with people on costs. We do have a cost calculator at Sunfish too that can kind of help with planning, but it's a big expense. And so, I know these numbers can seem scary, but the good news is you can kind of break this into phases, and see all of the available resources. So, first step, if you were to come to Sunfish, we'd help you review your insurance. This is a new service that we're offering. Sometimes IVF is included. A lot of times, unfortunately, for LGBTQ couples, there may be more restrictions, but we can kind of help you review. Sometimes maybe diagnostic testing for your own embryo creation is included, but surrogacy is not. So there's a lot of nuance here, and it's worth doing a thorough review to see what support you have or what employer benefits you might have. And then we'll help you build a layered financial plan. So obviously, if you have savings or HSA or FSA that you can use, that's great. More and more employers are offering benefits. We actually see people switching employers to get some of those benefits. Probably the most I'll see is up to like $100,000. There's very few employers that go above that, but it can certainly help even if it's a small amount. There are grants and discounts available. We have a large free searchable database where sometimes there's grants for Jewish families or cancer survivors or different things that you can search for. Um, Even gifts that from your family might, don't be shy to ask future grandma and grandpa. And then we'll talk a little bit about loans and financing, and some of the medications that your surrogate will need, or when you're creating embryos that you need for the IVF process. Those can sometimes be discounted as well. So, again, we'll kind of help you go through all of this, but there are a lot of tools out there to support you on your journey. Um, if you do need to apply for a loan, we always say this is kind of the last resort once you've explored all other options. And we at Sunfish have the largest kind of loan marketplace to help match people with financing. We actually offer up to $400,000 secured loans and up to $100,000 unsecured. So that can really help with the journey. Um, it's hard to apply for such a big loan for many people. So my quick tips, this is not financial advice, but just some things that we've seen many people do successfully. You want to consolidate credit cards, pay down balances, try to avoid multiple loan applications at once, make sure that you don't have a credit freeze. You can add a cosigner, maybe, future grandma and grandpa wants to co-sign, that can help. When you're applying, make sure you include your full income and then just borrow the smallest amount possible to start. That will make you most likely to be approved. So, again, I know this is a lot, but I just wanted to give you a peek of some of the things that we can offer. We do have a full financial work session and quiz on our site, as well as human support that can support you on all of this. Um, so that was the stressful numbers part. I'll talk about the logistics briefly as well. Anything you want to add to that so far, Brian?
No, just I liked what you said. I also know people who swatch jobs just to
Which
get
ones?
benefits, switch jobs rather to get benefits. And there's nothing wrong. By the way, when you are negotiating for a new job, that's the time to make sure you're going to get your fertility benefits. If they already offer it to your heterosexual uh, colleagues to be, then chances are they're much more likely to get it for you as well. And by the way, I think the
Mm,
first step for anyone is to go to your HR team and find out what, regardless of what path you're taking, find out what benefits they offer and what benefits they may not yet offer the LGBTQ plus community, but maybe they should start to, and see if you can get that going.
absolutely. Okay, cool. And then once you figured out your pathway, there are a few ways to protect your investment. Obviously, this is a marathon, like Brian said. Not everything goes smoothly. So, Sunfish is really here to help people protect their investments and financially plan. We offer refund programs if you're not successful. We offer multi-cycle packages if you're wanting to do multiple rounds of embryo creation. We have programs for surrogates, for egg donors, for sperm donors that will cover unlimited transfers and a baby guarantee. So we actually will guarantee that you go home with a baby. So these are all great things. Even if you have the finances, you don't need a loan. We see a lot of people coming to us for these types of protections. So you would basically work with Sunfish and your clinic and your agency as part of your team. Um, all right. Lastly, let's talk a little bit about logistics. So if you're going to be contributing your biology, like if you were the sperm or egg source for your embryo, there's a ton you can do before your embryo creation to really put your best foot forward. We have a lot of guidance on this at Sunfish, including a free kind of preparation module that we can give to you, but there's certain supplements, things in your lifestyle, depending on what your doctor recommends, that are really helpful. This is not medical advice, but just things that many doctors and studies show high evidence to support. Um, and especially for male partners, if you are contributing, sperm regenerates every 70 days. That's a fun fact that a lot of people don't know. So you can actually really influence the success of how many embryos you create by taking some steps early to prepare your own body for this process. And then lastly, as Brian mentioned and shared in his story, this is a really long and tough journey. It's unpredictable. It usually takes a few tries. It's really good to think a little in advance with your partner around some of the steps that can help you prepare emotionally. So, things like setting boundaries, deciding who's going to be in your inner circle that you talk to about this journey, deciding who's your support team that's really going to celebrate wins or be there holding space if you have a hard day, decide how each of you, if you have a partner, are going to communicate and decide what your non-negotiables are so that the rest of your team, like your surrogacy agency, your IVF clinic, um, really knows where your boundaries are and you can communicate that with them as well. This process requires you to really advocate for yourself because it is such a long and emotional process. And there's actually really great support communities online or fertility focused therapists that have been there and offer that support too. But every journey is different. So it's good to kind of
You
figure
know
out
what?
your plan. Yeah.
Yeah, Angela, I love that you're ending with this, and it's really funny because I wrote a blog post in May with
Uh-huh.
Joey Guzman Kufel from Counseling with Joey, who, as Andrew mentioned, is a fertility focused therapist. And it's called The Emotional Weight Nobody Warns You About: Mental Health in
Mm.
the LGBTQ plus Family Building Journey. And I strongly encourage folks to, I love that you're talking about this, but that makes you unusual because very few family building partners really truly talk about this. And so I hope anyone watching understands that the fact that you're bringing this up also is just another really wonderful value add about working with Sunfish, because most don't talk about this. And I think it needs to be talked about a lot more. So thank you for bringing this up.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, it's funny that you say that. We started with a big focus on finances and then realized that the emotional and logistical support was such a need. So over the last few years, we've really added a lot more into our program with this. Because you're right, it is something people don't start off thinking about. And then as you go through the journey, like we're now seeing one of the main reasons that people drop out of treatment is the stress around it.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
So yeah, that's really a summary of everything Sunfish offers. We Brian and I can stay on a few extra minutes because I realize we're at time and I want him to share what GWK Academy offers and answer a few questions. But we are here to support. These are all the things that Sunfish supports with financial planning, educational, physical kind of health preparation, and emotional support and helping you find and connect with and manage your preferred providers. So you would actually pay Sunfish and we'd help manage the journey for you, make sure you get discounts, savings, and excellent care along the way. Do you want to share anything further? I guess you did touch on this, but
Yes.
anything further about the
Yep.
GWK Academy?
Sure. It's at gwkacademy.org. Go there, sign in, check out. You'll see we have course. We actually have a PDF if you're not even sure which journey you want. We talk about adoption versus donor conception and sort of the life experiences, the priorities, the resources that people who choose one over the other typically have in common. So if that's helpful for you to choose the path that's best for you. And then we have courses on everybody's on every path to parenthood that I strongly encourage you. It's mostly just a series of videos. You can get through one as quickly as I binged through the last season of You. I was going to say, so, anyway, so it's worth going to. I just think starting from a place of education and knowledge is so important. I always like to stress before you talk to a doctor, before you talk to a surrogacy agency, understand the journey ahead of you. You'll have much more productive conversations with those folks when you do, if you're already educated through GWK Academy before you get started.
Absolutely. All right. If people can stay a few minutes longer, I would love to ask you a couple questions that have come in as we've been talking.
Sure.
So first one for you, we talked mostly about surrogacy and the timeline there. Can you share the timeline of other options too?
Sure. So just coincidentally, the adopting a newborn baby in the United States is about the same timeline. It's about 2 years as well, from start to finish.
Mhm.
And for some people, that means it takes a little longer. Other people, it's a little less longer. They can shave some of that time off. Um, and I would say an adoption journey today in the United States is going to cost somewhere between 40 to $50,000. So if you're comparing 150, 220,000 plus versus 40 to 50,000, maybe that is going to be something that's going to help you out. Adopting from the foster care system, just really quickly, there are 300,000 plus kids in the foster care system in the US. About a quarter of those kids are freed for adoption. So the point of foster care is that these kids are going to be reunited with birth family, right? It could be
Mhm.
parents or grandparents or cousins or aunts or uncles, somebody, but about a quarter of those kids are completely free for adoption. I mean, there's no one else to take those kids, and they're just waiting for a forever family. And I can tell you that the LGBTQ plus community, we are way overrepresented in the foster care system. There 30% of the kids in the system identify as LGBTQ plus.
Wow.
And so I always say to folks, like, it's adopting for the foster care system is not for everyone, but I can't help it, but as a gay adult man, feel somewhat responsible for the next generation of LGBTQ plus kids, the ones who are most vulnerable amongst us.
Yeah. One more question for you. So when you were going through transfers with your surrogate, did it work on the first try? Do you remember how many transfers you had to
I
go through?
did. And so back when we were doing it, these were the days where you still did multiple embryos on a transfer. Not quite Octomom days, but I think it was right around that, for those of you who might remember. So we did two embryos and they both took, and that's Ella and Sadie today.
Wow.
Can
Two,
I,
two at once. Yeah.
Too. Can I ask a question that's come up for me to ask you? Uh,
Yes.
when do people typically, when do you want them to get in touch with Sunfish?
It's always best to reach out to Sunfish at the very beginning of your journey. We've built out so much support from helping you pick your team of providers to that financial protection packages, figuring out finances if you need finances, and then helping you make a personalized plan. So the sooner the better. Like we love to talk to people 3 or 4 months before they're going to actually get started with treatments.
Okay, that's good for me to know too. And then what about like just between I know I talked to a lot of people who are working with financial advisors today. Do you
Mhm.
work with financial? How does that work with you all?
Yeah, no, it's funny you asked that. So more and more, I think planning for IVF, planning for surrogacy is part of overall financial planning for families. So we have financial coaches, like real humans here that will talk to you and help you figure out a plan. And later this summer, we're actually adding the option to link with a financial advisor to talk to you about
Wow.
your full financial plan, not just IVF through Sunfish. So I'm excited to be announcing that later on. But yeah, it's a big decision. Even if you have the funds, there's a lot of planning that goes into thinking about all the steps of this journey, what's going to happen when you have a kid. So we have a few tools like that, like cost calculators, planning for your child, that can be really helpful too.
Awesome. That's great to
Yeah.
know. I
Well,
love that
thank
we're
you.
always so in sync.
I know. That's a good question. Well, thank you, Brian, so much for spending some time today. Happy Pride Month to
Thank
everyone.
you. Yes, happy Pride.
Maybe just repeat if people want to find you, the best place to find you.
Sure, gwkacademy.org. You can always send an email to family at GWK Academy or send us a message. We're really very engaged on Instagram at Gays with Kids and
Fantastic.
GWK Academy. Yes.
Yeah, and you have a great account. So hopefully everyone gives you a follow. We
Thank
are
you.
joinsunfish.com, and anyone who watches this webinar and needs financial support, we're actually giving a small discount on the IVF success packages for people who get started
Awesome.
before August 15th as part of our Pride contribution. So we'd be honored to
Wonderful.
help everyone. Thank you guys for joining.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.